From the main protagonist to shopkeeper NPCs, Toby loves they-thems. Like, everywhere. So much so, I had to make a video separate from my trans discussion on just NBs. Okay, I had a decent amount of things to say about non-binary Undertale and Deltarune characters, but I decided to scrap it. It was for the better. Because apparently, non-binary people are the coolest fucking things since sliced bread to you guys. Holy crap. So this is, without a doubt, a community discussion of the nature of non-binary characters in Undertale and Deltarune. You want a theory? Not here, but we do write some headcanons. You want a dissection? Like, a little bit? You want proof NB characters are NB? Probably not here. What I can promise you, a lot of looking at Frisk and Kris's characters, commentary on Toby's way of writing non-binary rep, and some personal evidences and anecdotes as well. Oh, and the headcanons too. First off, thank you all, actually from the bottom of my heart. I never thought I'd be a YouTuber who actually has a bit of a following here and a group of people willing to continuously interact and watch my content. Trust me, I memorize your guys' profile pictures. I see you guys if you comment a lot. I love you guys. I'm super thankful you guys all filled this form out for me, and I will link the responses in the description. I don't know if I will list all the socials of all of you guys like I usually do. There are a lot of you. I'll say. Also, guys, I didn't want to have to say this, but maybe I wasn't super clear on the purpose. These forms are supposed to foster discussions and points of conversation. I have no issue with short responses, especially if you guys have a lot of other ideas on other questions or just had fun filling out the form. But it's a little frustrating and annoying when I see that you just replied, I don't know or I don't care as answers and then hit submit. It kind of wastes everyone's time. You click the link and just put I don't know for every question, and then you added your name for credits? What do you think this is? It's kind of silly though, because I'll be scrolling, reading people's craziest thoughts, and then I just see, I don't know. And I'm like, wow, thank you for sharing. Alright, enough intro blabber. Let's go! The one important thing I wanted to put my 2 cents in here is how odd I find it that when people do assign a gender to these two, Kris is often given male and he, him, and Frisk being called she, her. Not exclusively, but notably. And Kris is an RPG protag, and I get how people expect the protag to be a guy. It's a reoccurring thing. Frisk being a child, being passive to the soul possessing them, and being manipulated in the general route just adds to how odd this feels when I see people draw them as an aged-up anime girl. I just think it's weird. One of the things I was curious about and focused on in the forum was how Kris and Frisk are meant to be their own characters. Like Link from Zelda, not self-inserts like the Pokemon Pro tags I remember from games I'd emulate on my PC. How weird it is that this has been debated seemingly because they use they-them. If they had gendered pronouns, it'd be more of an indication of individuality. And I understand English, and they-them being at times unclear or purposely objectifying. But I don't think that applies to Frisk and Kris. I'll circle back to this later. Let's see what y'all said. Gato says that although Frisk is more open-ended, Kris is undoubtedly their own person, and then further mentions how them being a human in a monster-filled town parallels the experience of an NB teenager. Much of Kris's NB-ness has been interwoven into the story as much of their objectification, and the two come hand in hand. I agree. I think there's something impactful in Kris being used as a puppet and being non-binary, alongside the only human in a monster town. It seems like these things hold an interconnectedness with one another and share impact onto the story. It feels weird when people ignore Kris being non-binary, because to me, it feels as strong as ignoring any of these other aspects of them as well. Disorganized Guts talks about loving non-binary monarchs. Relatable. Get behind me, Kris Deltarune. But they say, I've always found the little crumbs of Frisk's characterization we get incredibly interesting. I love thinking about how they actually are as a person and speculating what life before they fell and after pacifist must have been like, / have been like for them. They're just so carefree and nonchalant about everything, not giving a fuck about the literal god about to slime them out or fitting into any gender binary. Unfortunate thing about that, though, is that Frisk is a lot more subtle in the way they're presented as their own person separate from the player, at least next to Kris. So they don't feel as rich and complex as a character as Kris. To conclude, Disorganized Guts talks about how disheartening and annoying it is that transphobes somehow found Deltarune. and talks about how integral Kris and Frisk's identity is to the story, which I agree with. And I also do get very annoyed when people don't respect them as their own person. I totally understand. You said perfectly what I was thinking about Frisk. As hard as it can be to accept Frisk as more than a self-insert with what we got in Undertale, I believe Undertale wasn't the game to explore the protag like Deltarune is. It purposefully leaves some facts ambiguous to allow for theorizing and interpretation, as well as imprinting our own motives, whether pacifist or Geno, more clearly onto them. That would be more difficult with Frisk was clearly established as their own person, just like in Deltarune. I also agree with how valid it is to get frustrated when a key point of Deltarune is overlooked by someone's sheer need to defy trans people by assuming Crisp is not, I just called them Crisp, is not non-binary. It shocks me too how stiff people get about gender discussions in a game where I argue gender plays a majority. That's not what that says. Gender plays a major role story-wise. Alter Ego talks about the key differences in your identity when you're a kid versus when you're a teenager. How Frisk is in a time of their childhood where you're kind of just told what to do and you just do it. Adults tell you who you should be based on what you're born as, and if you're already pretty apathetic towards gender, like Alter Ego or Frisk, then it's pretty easy to just go along with what they say. In Undertale, Frisk shows little to no resistance to what we choose to do, which, might I mention, could be some sort of allegory for the example you just gave with gender. We mold them into the type of person we want them to be, because they're just an easily influenced kid. It reminds me of how gender roles felt to me as a little kid around that age. Adults told me that I was a girl, put certain silly expectations of me, and I shrugged it off because I really couldn't care less. But Kris, as a teenager, is experiencing their own wants and desires, and questioning who they are. Any choice that Kris makes actually isn't their decision, it's ours. And Kris does actively stand up against choices that we make, which shows that they yearn to be someone outside of who the player expects them to be. This is similar to how parents and other authority figures react when you start expressing that you're not a little kid anymore and you're trying to become yourself. I think this is a great dissection that explores the differences in age. I feel like a fool for never really looking at that aspect sooner, and it makes total sense. It perfectly encapsulates the differences in gender exploration and personality as a whole when you're younger versus when you're discovering yourself, which is literally teenhood, discovering yourself. Their identity as using they/them is impactful for reasons other than Kris's identity. They sit more as non-binary rep because they are just an impressionable kid learning through a soul possessing them. This honestly makes me think that with Frisk, there is a double meaning of they/them objectifying them as a vessel we enact our control over, but not because they're willing to swallow their identity and just accept their fate in our hands, but because they're a kid and they don't know what to do. Rhea talks about how in the true pacifist run of the game, we can learn a little bit of insight onto who Frisk is. But contrastingly, in neutral or genocide run, it feels more like we are controlling a vessel, which is very, very cool and very good writing on Toby's part. There is a certain horror to this. Though it is not thoroughly explored, we are stripping this human of their humanity as we play through the game. And I would argue it not being explored actually adds to it in the sense that we can just totally take a step back and just strip this human of their humanity and not think twice about it, whereas contrastingly in Deltarune, we are forced to think twice about it. As it pertains to non-binary rep, I believe there is something to be said about conformity and masking that ties to both Kris and Frisk, and Kris is greatly a more effed up situation. They have to deal with so much more in terms of breaking their identity, relationships, and freedom with the soul's existence. They resist so much more than Frisk, likely to being older. Now, this is something I heavily relate to, having DID. You have DID? Where were you when we were talking about Pink having DID? Then you bring up something very interesting, which is the fact that, yeah, hometown is supportive, but not exactly. And with the whole king-queen thing, I feel like that is such a good representation and illustration of how the world functions. People claim to be so woke, and this kind of feels like the his pronouns are they them meme, but it really is. Like, people can be as woke and progressive as they want, but there are still going to be moments where gendered labels just come flying out of nowhere. Then to conclude, I see people misgender Kris and Frisk all the time in real life, and I always find it interesting they tend to dehumanize these characters because they have full control over them. put them in a box and ship it to a gendered space in their brain. This is the typical non-binary experience. Yes, this is the non-binary experience. The way you said you hear people misgender them in real life reminds me of when people have a conversation about you while you aren't present. How quickly some people completely forget who you are and literally lump you in a box. Perfect connection to how these characters also represent and describe the non-binary experience, to them being vessels, being shoved into gender boxes by certain fans, and the world around them still feeling a few steps behind, like Kris having to wear Asriel's clothes, or like we said, the king and queen thing being the only options at the festival. Losty brings up a very important point of how it feels so misogynistic to always misgender Kris as a man when we don't even know their assigned gender at birth, and we have no business with that anyways. It shouldn't matter to us when they are non-binary, but because of this misconception, I just feel icky when I see Kris being depicted or headcanoned as assigned male at birth NB and heavily masculized than they actually are. But that's just my experience related to this kind of transphobic association with fandom's treatment, and I don't target anyone personally for relating to that kind of depiction of Kris. I love you all, my NB siblings. They also mention how they don't like it when people depict Kris as Girl 2.0. It again feels so out of character to depict the most androgynous freak of all time like that. There's of course no only one way to be NB, but mischaracterization of a character for your own enjoyment in public is not cool in my opinion. And all this misogyny unfortunately comes from the classic RPGs being targeted towards men and young boy, and so protags always being men and only men. It is partially why that transphobia comes from mainly the ignorant male players, unfortunately. Then they bring up a really relatable thing about how hanging out with girls makes them feel like they have to take the masculine role, and reverse with hanging out with boys. It's like I have no say in what I want to do and always have to just be flexible to accommodate others first. Seeing something that seems so small yet so deeply personal, even in Toby's ideal fictional world, makes it feel real. And despite the world not being fit for us now, doesn't mean things can't change. Perfect. Mischaracterization of a character for your own enjoyment in public is not cool. Genuinely a great encapsulation of how I think the fandom behaves and rationalizes what they make. I personally don't have any issue with seeing Kris drawn in different lights myself. I think it's an exploration of creativity, but I understand the sentiment. I also understand this is exactly how people feel about the Rousey trans debate. What I would argue as an exploration, people do see as a mischaracterization. Anonymous really likes how Kris is portrayed, and their gender, and their lack of autonomy, and their internal struggles. Them wearing both gendered clothing during battles as well as in the dark world in general can be seen as having a space free of judgment and where they can be themselves. Unlike in the light world, in the dark world, in their castle town room, they have all kinds of clothes, hyper-masculine, hyper-feminine, and androgynous, which they really don't seem to have access to in the light world. Another thing I've noticed is how their assigned gender at birth isn't mentioned or discussed. There's decent evidence for either directions, and I like how in the secret Ferris wheel dialogue in Chapter 5, Noelle mentions fighting with Kris between who would be the festival king and who would be the queen, which not only makes Kris' assigned gender at birth more up for interpretation, but Noelle's too. I agree, and I do enjoy that their assigned gender of birth is up for interpretation. A lot of you mentioned how often people try and figure it out, which I agree is annoying. In certain aspects, I get it, but I think now, especially me, I'm moving more towards understanding Kris's character outside of that. Like, I assumed the non-men sign meant that they're assigned male at birth, but they can just be uncomfortable with masculine titles or generalizations. I also didn't really give the Noelle dialogue thought, and that's such a cute detail. That's so illustrative of kids being kids and not caring about gender implications, and just being at like a standard fluidity with their identity before they begin to question it. Vbop, trans shippers should be incinerated. Kris! They exist outside the binary, outside of your control, and exist between categories like antagonist and protagonist, switching to one role or the other on a dime. The intense themes of dysphoria, like the mirror dialogue, or even the player-Kris dynamic. I mean, having to rip out your own soul and put it in a cage just to feel like yourself again is really a direct and effective metaphor. Very fitting for a character that exists outside the gender binary. Yes, literally yes. Toby, two things can be true at once. Fox strikes again with the soul analogy. Well, the soul can represent like 7 things at once, truthfully, but being trans, especially non-binary, is pretty accurate for at least one of them. I think even with gendered pronouns, people would headcanon Kris as trans because of this, and their other actions, so that's gotta mean something. Mint talks about how Toby Fox literally made an RPG that goes against the norm, proving that the characters are not self-inserts. In typical RPGs, the character you're controlling says something like, "Sorry, my mind is hazy," or "Oh, I didn't mean to." That indicates that you're playing as them, and this does not happen in Undertale or Deltarune. In fact, quite the opposite. There are numerous indicators that let us know we are not Kris and we are not Frisk. And they bring up the Chapter 3 egg room, how it could indicate that Kris is assigned male at birth, and how the Eggman could be their therapist that they shared their feelings of gender dysphoria with. I agree. I also enjoy Eggman as therapist theory and think that it makes a lot of sense. And I think you provide a lot of evidence on why Frisk and Kris truly are their own people, with important comparisons to other RPGs, so I appreciate that. Jay talks about how Frisk, Kara, and Kris are all their own people, shown with their own likes and dislikes. Kris being non-binary is central to the game's theme of agency, and part of the fandom's insistence their gender is up to interpretation exemplifies this. Being non-binary, people often think they can just decide for you whether your gender is valid or not. It's the same for Kris. Some players believe they can project their own ideas of gender onto them. Firstly, thank you for also bringing up Kara, and secondly, I agree with your comparison to being non-binary and how people just decide if you're valid, or even decide which gender they want to secretly fit you into or lean into more. You know what I mean? Like, it's definitely incredibly challenging for some people to just see neutrality in terms of gender, at least for humans. Great response. Spacey Boy talks about how having human NB protagonists is so important among a world where a surprising majority of genderless characters we see are robots or aliens or whatever the knight from Hollow Knight is. I agree totally. Human NB rep is really important because the further away from humanoids we get, the easier it becomes for people to accept neutrality. So therefore, we just need plain humans who are gender androgynous. Well, that's all the human talk. Good stuff, guys. It's taken the longest out of all the sections, I think, but this was a good conversation. The next thing I wanted to look at was more casual non-binary rep. Like I said about humanoids, Toby has a lot of other characters that are non-binary but also non-human, giving them more of a plausible deniability to being non-binary, but still using they/them openly in the game. These characters include the flowers like Green and Seth and Napstablook, plus Pink and Metaton before they possess their bodies. I personally do like their rep, and I especially like it combined with human non-binary characters. It is a little disheartening that they all seem to be ghosts or human interpretations of flowers, so thank God for Sham. That's the section after this, but let's see what you guys said. Jay says, I do wish it was pointed out more for Napstablook because their cousins are very expressive about their gender identity. Napstablook feels left out. Even though in canon they're cis, I wish their non-gender expression could be explained or pointed out for the players. I agree, I miss Napstablook being as important as they were in Undertale. Also, so many people try and argue Napstablook isn't trans because ghosts are non-binary, and respectfully, what are you trying to get at? They use they/them, their gender is not the binary, so they're non-binary. Non-binary falls under the trans umbrella. Not all trans rep is just going from one biological sex to another. Things can be more complicated than that. Chipa brings up how some people might interpret non-binary people in the Undertale world can be born that way as cis rather than discovering it eventually, but they personally believe that they aren't really intended to be cis non-binary characters and more just an accepted gender identity in the Undertale Deltarune universe. I agree totally. I think the debates are weird about cis non-binary because they're born as non-binary, but calling them cis just feels like an effort to purposefully shove them into something more normative. You know what I mean? SK mentions how the ghosts being non-binary may just be to make the trans representation of Metaton and Mew Mew a little bit more clear, and then goes on to talk about Seth and how Seth is very explicitly unsure of their gender, something that, as far as I'm aware, isn't anywhere else in Undertale or Deltarune. This is important in my opinion because it's important for people who are still on the journey of figuring themselves out representation-wise. It's fine to headcanon Seth as non-binary, but I don't like people treating it as canon just because they them is used in the events of the game. Seth didn't know their gender during chapter 5 and will likely never be sentient enough to comprehend the concept of gender again. Damn, that was sad. Right, Seth being confused on their gender is a very interesting and new concept, explored outside of maybe Rouse if you choose to see him in that light. I think the answer on why they're called non-binary by the fandom is because it is an umbrella term and encompasses them using they/them. Like, people just conclude that Seth is conveying being outside of the binary with their gender, so people just say they're non-binary, but I do understand that it can foster a very narrow-minded mindset. The unoriginal person credits Infi0 for their analysis on Seth and mentions that Toby has made Undertale characters being non-binary as just kind of accepted, but when it comes to Seth, their gender is questioned by Aqua in the cafe break, which then goes into something genuine about their confusion over their gender, which is some good dialogue on a very real experience with the chaos that comes with the 8 flowers. Even with all the humor, Toby still made Seth represent a real experience. I need to check out Infi0's video. It has been in my watch later list forever, but I agree. I think the questioning is an impactful moment of showing the realness of Seth. You know what I mean? It makes the rep I called jokey more serious and well written. Anonymous says that they feel like the pronouns could be said more often. I would like it if there was a system that made it so the pronouns would be more obvious without changing the dialogue. For example, adding a symbol or pronouns in a corner of a dialogue box. That's actually a really fucking good idea. People would hate you for this though. They'd be like, no, don't make the game woke. Side-eye. But yes, no, because imagine like a book in our menu that shows all the major characters with like their sprite and some basic info, because I know some RPGs like doing something like that, and then also the pronouns. Like, that would be so helpful to just end fandom fights. Toby, give us what we want. That should be what's clarified in chapter 6. Pronouns. Branch talks about how the rep is good but not exceptional. It's for the most part just being casual with characters you have to be casual with, and I hope deeper characters get to experience the non-binary spectrum, Rouse and Noelle in particular. But Deltarune has a very gendered story, ironically. I hope Toby is going somewhere with the girl part of the prophecy, but I'm so anti-gender essentialism that is going to rub me the wrong way and a bigger sample of potential directions it could go. If anything, there's some influence from the fandom souring my taste. But you know, if Deltarune ain't queer enough, I just gotta step up and make something queerer. Whatever you make, I'll be there to support it. I love queer people. Make a minority maxing media, please. I want more groups that are chronically underrepresented to just be the entire cast of a piece of media. But to get back on track, yes, I get what you're saying. It's hard to judge Deltarune in terms of strictly gender and queer expression, because although it does a great and a huge job of representing such, it's not the core of the game. Which makes me happy because yes, this is a cool ass story that just features side plots of gender struggles and gay people, but also leaves us with so much more room. And these characters to be explored so much more outside of the story, which is both a good and a sad thing, I'd say. Snakers talks about how important it is to have casual non-binary rep that normalizes us as just a normal part of society. They then go on to talk about how a lot of TV shows have non-binary characters that are just not human or a completely different species than everyone else, rather, and have just barely any screen time or are confirmed outside of the media that they are non-binary, which just sets an unhealthy standard of what non-binary is and how it should be represented. That's why I love how Toby Fox represents not just non-binary people, but trans and gay people in general. Yes, in both Undertale and Deltarune, there is the trope of having humans alongside non-human creatures. However, both games, especially Deltarune, make it a point to clarify that humans and monsters are not that different from each other, and are able to coexist without issue. Furthermore, different gender identities are not exclusive to one side. A monster, and by extension a darkener, can be trans, just the same as a human being can be trans. To briefly cover the ghosts, them starting their lives, or afterlives, as non-binary doesn't lessen any of their trans identities. Both Mediton and Maddie the Mad Dummy, explicitly show that ghosts choose who they want to be and how they want to present themselves, and Napstablook shows that staying as they them is also valid. Yes, thank you for saying what needed to be said. These things are allegorical. Not every label needs mountains of evidence to be proven as true, you know what I mean? Like, they're not trans because they don't biologically change sexes. It's just an argument thrown around by people who throw up in their mouths a little when they say the words canon trans character. That's going to wrap up our discussion on the flowers and ghosts, aka the non-human NBs. We're gonna shift gears, or we're gonna transition actually, wink wink, into more non-human NBs, Sham and Monster Kid. Sham, I know, uses they, them, and I don't know, they're casual rep to me, seemingly the point of a lot of fandom fights and misunderstandings, and like, I get misgendering a character like Sham, it is kind of missable, so maybe once or twice, but you can't tell me it's not a little insane that someone who does research enough to make a theory video and claims to know a lot about Deltarune suddenly doesn't know character pronouns. Not saying people don't make mistakes, but it just feels a little like character identities do tend to get overlooked. That's why I spend so much time making content of them. Let's see what you guys said. Cordelius talks about how Monster Kid did get overlooked, but a lot of players were super surprised in a pleasant way to find out that Sham uses they, them. It happened over an official live stream. Regardless, these characters feel like the type of rep that isn't a big deal in a good way. They just go about their lives in the overworld, but simply knowing they're non-binary makes said overworld feel more alive and diverse. Yes, I do think that sadly they do still get forgotten about, but a lot of people will then learn about it and be really excited about it and embrace it. So I think it's just a slight oversight by players. It's not that obvious, which is a good thing. I don't blame people for not catching it, but I do blame people for then learning about it and choosing to be arrogant about it. Lucas says, I guess my thoughts are people tend to default assume male pronouns for characters that aren't gendered in game. We see this happen over and over again with like every non-binary character, which says nothing, I'm sure. Yeah, no, it means nothing. Don't read into it. If you do, some men will call you sexist and a misandrous, so be prepared. Misandry is a mindset, and I have it. I'm kidding. I'm a man on days that are odd. I'm kidding. I'm a man when the label feels right. But yeah. Neutral yellow dinosaur, and people go, man, it gets exhausting once you notice it. Remember guys, Dr. Pepper could be a woman. Crystal Soul talks about how they'll just be happy if these two characters get mentioned in a non-binary discussion video. I relate, I totally get you. And they say that one more thing I'll add is that friends' pronouns have never been confirmed. So by process of elimination, the fandom should use they for them instead of he. Truth bomb. Like guys, I know they're a freakish cat being, but maybe they're not a boy. Plus there's multiple of them anyways, so now it makes sense to use they, them. And knowing Toby, he'd probably make them gender neutral anyways. Good stuff. 2D Emerald is just sussing out Sham, and honestly, yeah, what is their issue? What are they doing? What do they know? And yes, in terms of gender, I do agree that Sham is just not mentioned and referred to in the third person quite enough for everyone to realize that they are they, them. Azrael doing anything but coming home from college, huh, buddy? I jest. But they say, I feel like people, even if they correct people who misgender Kris, commonly misgender Sham and or Monster Kid, or don't feel like they really care. I understand that, and it is just disheartening to see that they get forgotten about, but it's okay. That's why we make videos like this, to remind people. This is my favorite part now. It's like the payoff, the personal experience section, which is just personal experiences relating to the game. I included a few answers that struck me the most, but for me personally, all I gotta say is, were you ever really a baby gay NB at 13 if your favorite Undertale character wasn't Napstablook? This is a beautiful response. The mirror dialogue is so important. It represents so many things, mostly story progression and Kris's internal battles, but also has a double meaning with gender struggles, as you pointed out. I can relate to not wanting to see myself in mirrors, and that's stuff I totally get you on. Heavy on how he genuinely writes trans characters out of a place of love and interest. Shout out Toby, making everyone feel seen and loved. I'm so glad you're in a much better place mentally. I hope you continue to advocate and gain a safer environment. I'm happy you're doing better, and it's crazy how much a fictional character can do for us. Much love, and I wish you the best. I hate red states. Come to a city. Cities are usually blue. Mom Donnie himself will save you, actually. Yes, because where are my she-theys and he-theys? And thank God for Ralsei, because where are the she-he-theys? That's personally what I hope for Ralsei. Where are the bi-genders, the pan-genders, the gender fluids and fluxes? Where are they at? Kris, but imagine them as gender fluid, like the player's gender is up to Kris's interpretation. I would love an it's self character. People hate on those pronouns, which is stupid because why are you hating on pronouns? So I agree, and I wish a piece of media could make a jump like that. You know those memes that are like level 1 woke, like you guys just don't understand. This is like, we need a level 10 woke representation in media. I'm talking every character has neopronouns, there are several Therians, 3 intersex people who all use different pronouns and labels, a queer platonic relationship, and 8 drag queens. That's what I want to see. The impact this little blurbo has had on all of us transgender and weird kids, man. I wish you nothing but luck in finding outfits to express yourself in. Femme-attire has always been, in my opinion, more fun and diverse in styles anyways. Yes, when people continue to ask me why I'm always making videos on character pronouns and not using my potential because I just talk about LGBTQ all the time, I'll read your monologue on trans people because you get it. This rep and these discussions are important. They're comforting for people, and they're the reason somebody explores who they are and finds a deeper happiness they didn't know about. Yes, guys, this is a crime to see yourself differently in different characters. Like, literally one of the best parts of the fan base is how we can do this. And this sort of thing, the headcanons, happened because Deltarune and Undertale attract gay people. I actually have 2 videos on why Undertale and Deltarune attract neurodivergent people, which tend to be gay and trans people as well. Don't worry, for everyone who doesn't care about LGBTQ rep, I'm here to care so much. I really hope you find your people that support you, and I'm glad that Toby's games can be a place of comfort and something to relate to. Toby, you have adopted all queer outcasts, whether you like it or not. Holy shit, Animal Jam. I miss it. But this is relatable. You and I are the same but different. You're a man leading non-binary. I'm a non-binary leading man. Shout out us. And yes, shout out Toby, from his feminine trans man characters to his overall amazing rep. And finally, headcanon time. A new way though. I'm going to just read them and see what you guys have said. I haven't seen them yet, so we're going to scroll through them together. Alright. Boom. Ralsei. Boom. Kris assigned male as birth. Boom. Bi-gender Ralsei. He, they swatch. Shudda. Kimber thing. It's it pronoun. Ralsei gender fluid. Des. Non-binary. Keep those 2 in mind, they're a reoccurring theme. I have to re-record this because the audio on the first take was roll the clip. Trans Ralsei again. There more of trans Ralsei. Yeah, so we're back at it again for round 2. Birdly, any pronouns? Forgotten man, putting up the signs in man country. Ooh. This is my favorite one. Butch, trans masc, non-binary, he, him, lesbian sans. Reading that, I had no clue what the next word was going to be. Ralsei, non-binary. Birdly, non-binary. Lancer, non-binary. Trans Ralsei. Noel, non-binary. A Noel is just a Noel. Why so curious? Who is Chester Holiday? Papyrus, mask, non-binary. Suji, gender apathetic. Ralsei, gender fluid. Transfemme Ralsei. I have something important to tell you. I am secretly non-binary. I love the she, they, it pronouns headcanon because the way we've been referring to the knight and the person in the code and all of the mysteries that have to do with deaths, she, they, it is fitting. Noelle should try out he, him pronouns, but in a lesbian demigirl way. He should try out testosterone too. He better not name himself Chester. I'm starting another weird route. Who's Chester? Gender fluid Rouse. Pizza pants. Pizza pants. So random. And milk looker. Gerson, any pronouns, even as mask as she is. Gerson would never let labels restrict her. Diva. All y'all using pronouns that aren't canon for the characters, watch out, you're gonna get dragged in the comments. Susie Fictokin, you see Susie as agender. Okay, yes. Agender, butch, lesbian Susie? Yeah, throw asexual and aromantic onto that too. Noelle, non-binary. Jevel, transfemme Rouse, or gender fluid Rouse. Both. Transfemme, gender fluid. Alphys, or Alphys, sorry, it's a habit to say Alphys, but yes, she is so, she, they. Addisons are genderless. Ooh, you said like the gems in Steven Universe. I was gonna say like the ghosts in Undertale. Pippins. Swatch, the he, they, NB, okay. And El Nino and La Nino. Genderqueer, for sure. I barely brought them up in the trans video. I feel so bad. They deserved a bigger spotlight. The trans ever. Androgynous, trans mask, non-binary Susie. Yes! Yeah, Susie gets everything. Susie just gets everything. A non-binary Des, I see it. It's emerging. It's coming to me. I love it. Rouse. Non-binary, gender fluid, Rouse. For me personally, I have almost always seen all humans as non-binary. Like in the game. Because I have that issue, but in real life. Vessel, it's green, they, she, lion person in a dress, they, she, Jade Harley, Manticore, they, it, burger pan. Who's Jade? What? Are you making what? Closeted NB, nice cream guy, closeted femme, non-binary, Rouse, any agender, device friend, it's gastric. You've lost me, but I like it. Birdly. Yes. Lesbian Muffet. I'm glad you like my headcanon videos. I need to get into AUs. Rouse gender fluid. Rouse gender fluid. Jevel. Sweet. Swatch. You just said Togor. Jackenstein's pumpkin. No label though. Transfemme, Melisek, and Kris. Ooh. Noelle, some type of non-binary. Agender queen. Non-binary Tenna, trust me. Yes, I trust you. And non-binary Sans. And they can make out. I see the vision. Rouse. Rouse. Milk looker again? Lancer is Lancer gender. I don't know if that's an actual thing. I'm gonna be the first to say I don't think that's an actual thing, but it can be for Lancer. It can be for anyone. Queen non-binary. Papyrus and Des non-binary. Birdly. Transfemme Birdly. Ah, I like that. I like that a lot. Rouse gender fluid. Eram and Batsat. What if Rouse was non-binary? Okay, what if Noelle was non-binary? Kris's gender is not up to interpretation. Rouse gender fluid. Oh my gosh. Friend, no gender, just friend. Jongler. I love you, Jongler. Yellow Addison. Specifically the Yellow Addison. What do we even know about the Yellow Addison? And Swatch and Mike. No, not Mike, sorry. KK. Rouse gender fluid. Rouse non-binary. Sans gender flux. Small Mike is on the non-binary spectrum. Shadow guys are gender fluid. Rouse gender fluid. Undyne bare minimum gender non-confirming. Rouse bi gender. Ooh, Burley trans mask. I like how Burley could go either way. Same with Noelle. Jevel. Transfemme Rouse. Normal NPC Jevil, purple guy. Who the hell thinks about purple guy? I like you, you're funny. And friend, Des. Rouse and Jevil. Jevil he they. The back-to-back Jevil he they is crazy. Google must have done that. Non-binary Nubert. Or Nubbert. Monster Kid and Deltarune. I don't know if that's canon, but I know that they are in Undertale. Imagine they transition. Or detransition. For the lion NPC we gained as trans in Deltarune, we lost Monster Kid. Papyrus Demi Boy. The vessel is NB. I don't think about the vessel a lot, but like, yeah. Jongler Mike. The the player. Multiple. Question mark. Nor. Nah. Okay. Good shit. Good shit. I like all of these. You guys are funny. You guys are funny. Okay, so that's all, folks. As always, I'll try my best to keep the comment section free from bumbling idiots who have nothing productive to say. That is not that I'll delete any opposing opinions, but hate speech is still hate speech in comment form. There's a fine line, in my eyes, between people who want to critique or disagree and people who have nothing better to do with their time than write hateful bull. The latter is who will have comments reported and channels hidden. And by the way, if you comment on my account multiple times and try and use the incorrect pronouns for me and make it obvious that this is going to be a little reoccurring bit, I'm just gonna hide your fucking channel from commenting, ya dingus. Thanks. Now, I don't really know what my plans are from here. I was thinking of one more of these videos with sapphic and lesbian characters. If there's interest, I'll do it. If not, I may take a break, still probably post some dumb shorts and my art, but in terms of long form videos, I may need a bit to think about like where to go next and just take some time for me, honestly. I also need to move into college soon, so just keep that all in mind. If there's suddenly a 3-week gap of like little to no activity, I promise, like, I'm okay. But thanks everyone for tuning in and replying to my forums. It means a lot to me. I'm glad that you joined me on yet another roller coaster ride of pronoun yapathon. Bye guys.